What's up, guys? Welcome to Metal Vibes, and today we're going to be talking about my top 10 metal and heavy music albums of 2022. Get ready to hear about the albums that will make you
bang your fucking heads.
Coming in at number 10, we have Kazan, the newest album by the Polish band Witchmaster. Witchmaster formed way back in 1996 and play a really simple and punky combination of black death and thrash metal that has a very aggressive and belligerent attitude. The band are powered by the pummeling drumming of Inferno, who is obviously famous for his work in both Behemoth and Azarath. But unlike those other projects, Witchmaster are not concerned at all with being epic, but more concerned about just being as grounded and in your face as possible. Kazan, which is Polish for execution, is the band's sixth album and continues the band's tirade of brutality. The songs here are simple with just a couple riffs per track and only a few lyrics per track as well, but that's really all they need to achieve their ends, which are basically punishing the listener. On Kazan especially, you have a surprisingly clear production that lets you hear every element of the band's attack. And while I do like that approach, I do kind of prefer the more raw approach of earlier albums like 2002's Masochistic Devil Worship. That said, there is a good bit of variety here, like the simple pummeling of war metal haiku, the thrashier moments of the song Like Flies on Scum, and the more black metal moments of songs like All Consuming Hate. The word that keeps coming to mind with this album is belligerent, and if that sounds enticing to you, I would highly recommend checking this out, because this is definitely one of the most punishing yet enjoyable albums I heard this year. Coming in at number 9, we have Acts of God, the newest album by New York death metal legends Immolation. Immolation have been renowned for decades now for the dissonant riffing of guitarist Rob Vigna, but I think what really stands out to me about this band is just how consistent they've been throughout their career. I don't think there's an old school death metal band out there that's fared better than Immolation in terms of consistently releasing quality material. And Acts of God, I would say, really continues in that trajectory. Unlike their last album, 2017's Atonement, Acts of God feels like it really ramps up the straightforward aggression, particularly on songs like Overtures of the Wicked, which is one of my personal favorites from this record. As always, you have plenty of songs with dissonant churning riffs, marching rhythms, and then sharp melodies like those that appear at the end of the song, The Age of No Light. I also really enjoy the great production job on this album. I've consistently enjoyed Immolation albums throughout their career, but this one just continues to scratch that itch that really only Immolation can properly satisfy. It is a little long at 52 minutes, but to me, that's a minor quibble, and this is easily one of the best death metal albums of the year and an essential listen for any fan of the genre. Coming in at number 8, we have Dies Irae, the newest album by the Detroit-based band Perversion. Perversion formed in 2008, and I've been following them for quite a while now. They kind of remind me of America's version of Vomitor, and if you're familiar with that band, you'll know Vomitor specialize in an extremely raw combination of death and thrash metal with a little bit of black metal mixed in for good measure. The sound here is a mix of vomited, garbled rasps that are buried slightly beneath guitars that sound like blowtorches, which are playing a combination of vicious thrash riffs, trumpeting tremolos, and solos that sound like souls being sucked into a black hole. The album overall is really ugly, brutish, and pummeling, and most of all, raw as hell. There's almost a war metal feel to this album at times too, which I really like, but amidst all the pummeling, there's a lot of distinguishable riffs as well. And I think Perversion really know how to use those riffs to their fullest potential to create memorable songs. Particularly the tracks Decapitator and Fathomless Mastery, which are my two favorites from this album. There's also some nuances to these songs as well, with some layered and echoing chords to add a little bit of additional intrigue. I think for anyone interested in the more raw side of thrash metal or the more extreme side of that genre, this really is an album worth checking out, and I'm really excited to see what these guys do next, and hopefully the next album doesn't take so long to come out. Coming in at number 7, we have Through Sheer Will and Black Magic, the debut album by Pennsylvania band Diva. I think that's how you say that. Diva are a fairly new project featuring members of Crypt Sermon and the vocalist of the defunct black thrash band Infernal Stronghold. As a huge black thrash fan, Through Sheer Will and Black Magic really scratches an itch that few other albums this year scratched. With this album, you get fast drumming, hypercharged thrash riffs, and just a relentless energy that really never lets up. If you like Absu, and particularly the album Terra, I do not understand how you would not like this release. Amidst all the frantic energy, I really dig the occult atmosphere here and also the nuanced ideas that occasionally crop up, like how the band often use these wailing notes to make things sound more epic. In terms of standout moments, I love the song The Architect and the Monument, which has a particularly scalding solo. Arena at Dis has some riffs with real attitude to them. Then the closing track, Luciferian Return, is just an epic finish. There really isn't a dull moment here, and to me, this is a fantastic album that's easily my favorite black thrash album of the year. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they put out next and where they go from here, because this is a band with a lot of promise. Right, coming in at number 6, we have Cultura de la Muerta by Stillborn. Stillborn are a Polish black death metal band that formed in 1997. With their 5 prior albums, they've consistently produced a bludgeoning blend of black and death metal that makes Behemoth sound like they're playing nursery rhymes. Cultura de la Muerta, which is Spanish for Culture of Death, is the band's first album in 6 years and is probably the most heaviest and menacing album the band have released yet. The guitar sound here is thick and gigantic, and then the guitarist and the vocalist, who goes by the stage name Killer, has this hoarse bellowing roar that just sounds animalistic, like he's a minotaur with rabies. Yet usually when you hear a guitar sound this heavy, you expect music that's fairly slow, but here you have a lot of blast beats and a lot of really fast songs. So with the heavy guitars and the very fast tempos, you have an album that just feels like it has an immense sense of force to it. This album features plenty of wrecking ball tremolos, skull-shattering riffs, and through it all, though, you still have distinguishable ideas and songs that know how to breathe, how to build tension, and how to shift rhythms, and when to do that. It all leads to an album that's just terrific, and if anyone's looking for something that combines the heavier material of Behemoth with the more barbaric approach of South American bands like Sarcophago, this is the album for you. At 8 tracks in 28 minutes, it's also the perfect length for ruthless music like this, and this was definitely one of my favorite albums this year of the more bludgeoning variety. Coming in at number 5, we have Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven, the newest album by New Orleans legends Goatwhore. Since 1997, Goatwhore have been combining death, thrash, and black metal into a cogent cocktail that usually results in some pretty menacing albums. Over the years, I think they've gotten even better at writing more memorable songs and incorporating more variety into their music, and I think Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven possibly does that better than any of their prior albums. This album features more traditional Goatwhore songs like Born of Satan's Flesh, then you have more melodic and occult songs like the title track, and then you have thrashier cuts like Death from Above and Nihil. It's almost like this album just takes every facet of the band's sound and just does it as well as they ever have. I also love the closing track on this album, And I Was Delivered from the Wound of Perdition. It's one of the heaviest and most powerful songs this band has ever recorded, and is a great way to end the album. My biggest quibble about this album is that it's a little long, and I think a song or two could have been cut, but overall, I think this is an outstanding achievement from this group, and easily one of Goatwhore's best albums. Coming in at number 4, we have Void of Unending Depths by Inanna. Inanna is a death metal band from Chile that formed in the year 2000, and they play an interesting style of, I guess, what I would call progressive death metal. On their third album, Void of Unending Depths, you have a record that takes the sprawling soundscapes of Ulcerate and mixes in the mystical and otherworldly vibes of The Chasm, which is a really cool combination. And I'd also throw Blood Incantation out there as a point of comparison as well. The music here has a really organic feel and features really lengthy compositions that ebb and flow, climax and descend, and through it all just remain consistently engaging. For example, just listen to all the different movements in the opening track, Evolutionary Inversion, which I would say is one of the best death metal songs I've heard this year. Inanna is one of those bands that's very riffy and yet also very atmospheric, but there's also a lot of good variety to their riffs. You have twisted tremolos, bouncy grooves, some even progressive rock moments. There's a lot of standout ideas here, and the songs just feel so natural and so engaging. The key to Alpha Centauri kind of gives me artificial brain drifting through space vibes, which I love. Then on the song Mind Surgery, you even hear a bit of Later Death, which is pretty cool. This is a very captivating album to me, with a lot of interesting chord progressions, spacey leads, a real sense of vastness and mystery. There's so many twists and turns here, but it never feels like it's pointlessly meandering. It always feels like it's adventurous and giving you something interesting. I'd really highly recommend this for anyone interested in the more atmospheric side of death metal, and I'm really looking forward to diving into the band's earlier material, because this is actually the first album I've heard from these guys. All right, coming in at number 3, we have Trumpets Blare in Blazing Glory, the debut album by the Canadian death metal band Grenadier. So it's pretty much impossible to talk about Grenadier without name dropping the band Arg Hoslant, because Grenadier are pretty much a clone of that band. That said, I'm totally okay with this lack of originality. One, because I think Grenadier do this sound really well, and then two, Arg Hoslant are a band that's openly racist, so I do not like supporting them. Grenadier's sound, just like Arg Hoslant's, is pretty much death metal, but playing major key new wave of British heavy metal style riffs that you might hear on like a Running Wild album, which is just an insane combination that works surprisingly well and gives these songs just a sense of galloping triumph, which contrasts really well with the more guttural death metal vocals you hear throughout the album. This record is full of energetic and twirling guitars, glorious progressions, and even some reflective emotional riffs that come up every now and then. There's also some clever ideas like the clean picking that comes up in the opening track Atrocity Cycle. And in addition to that song, I love the track Storm Attrition, as well as the catchy riffs in the song The Napoleonic Code. And I also have to mention the title track, which is just phenomenal and has this really commanding refrain. Grenadiers certainly do this style better than House of Atreus, who are another Arg Hoslant clone band, and I would say Grenadiers' music is actually better than a lot of Arg Hoslant's own material. This is a band that, like so many other bands here, I'm really excited to hear what they do next, because this is a young group that really knows how to produce some truly captivating music. Coming in at number 2, we have Death Western, the newest album by the band Spirit World. Spirit World are a Las Vegas group whose lyrics and aesthetic are heavily inspired by the Old West. Whereas Spirit World started with a bit of a country-influenced sound that certainly fit with their Old West themes, they quickly evolved into an intense mix of thrash metal, hardcore, and death metal with a shitload of groove thrown on top. My first introduction to this band was 2020's Pagan Rhythms, which was their debut album and was easily one of my favorite records of 2020. And to me, Death Western certainly lives up to that debut. On this album, you have headbangable riff after headbangable riff, a lot of fast, vicious breakdowns. You have some deep, hoarse shouts for vocals that just command your attention. This album stands out because there's just so much conviction in the vocals and the performances, but also because of how great the songwriting is. Spirit World is a band that knows right when to launch into a thrashy assault, right when to settle into a pummeling groove, and right when to give you a random pause that just makes the impact of whatever you hear next that much more powerful. I also love the way they work a little bit of melody into their grooves, like on the songs Purified and Violence and Ulcer. The song Moonlit Torture is another highlight to me, which even features a guest vocal spot from Dwib Hellion of Integrity. Yeah, overall, if you don't bang your head to this album, you either don't have a pulse or you just have way better taste in music than I do, I guess. Spirit World recently signed to Century Media Records to put this album out, and I really think these guys are going places. This, to me, is a band to watch, and I have to say, it's really cool to see so many young bands producing so much material that, to me, is just really engrossing and very energetic, very captivating, very inspired. All right, coming in at number 1, my album of the year, we have A Eulogy for Those Still Here, the 7th album by the Canadian melodic hardcore band Counterparts. When I did my ranking list of Counterparts, I had a lot of critiques about this album, but I suspected that this album would grow on me like a lot of Counterparts albums do, and those suspicions turned out to be correct, because despite the fact that I still agree with those critiques, this album really did grow on me and easily triumphed over everything else released this year in my book. Front to back, this is another outstanding achievement from what I consider the best modern band out there today. This record is just packed with blistering hardcore energy, dazzling crescendos, really intricate and melodic guitars, and the always passionate lyrics and screams of vocalist Brendan Murphy. This album also stands out to me for its increased use of clean vocals, which are more prominent here than they've ever been on a prior Counterparts album. Those clean vocals help make the title track one of my favorite songs of this year. Even the closing track, A Mass Grave of Saints, which uses the clean vocals pretty prominently, is an amazing song, which has actually grown on me a lot since I did my ranking list a couple weeks ago. Flesh to Fill Your Wounds is another straight banger. Whispers of Your Death is an excellent track that is probably the most emotionally impactful song here. But honestly, this album's just packed with amazing moments. Yeah, if you have any interest in a hardcore band with more intricate guitar parts, Counterparts is an absolutely must listen. This is a band that has just been on such an amazing streak since their debut in 2010, and I'm so happy to see that they've continued upholding that quality on their newest album. But that'll do it for my list. Let me know in the comments what you think of these albums. Let me know what your top albums of the year are. And if you like this video, please subscribe, please drop me a like, and check out some of my other videos where I rank the discographies of many metal and heavy music bands. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thanks for tuning in as always, and I will see you next time. Stay heavy.